Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's There's a Will, about our 55th edition, I believe, maybe even 56th. I'll have to recount. I'm not sure. We've been doing this show every week since the invasion of Ukraine, not only covering Ukraine, but at least every show talking a little bit about it. But on this particular show, we're going to be addressing the problem of wounded soldiers in Ukraine. And we'll be talking to a doctor who's in charge of a hospital which deals with traumatic injury. His name is Stanislav Onyshchuk. And we'll be talking to Patrick Patterson, a photographer, a journalist who's been to that hospital and many other places in Ukraine along the front and in Kiev at his base. And we'll be talking to Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez, our usual contributor, ex-Special Forces medic and communications officer who has experience with traumatic injury on the battlefield and is now working with an NGO which is helping to deal with people who have these traumatic injuries, including specifically dealing with people who have lost an arm or a leg, a limb in the conflict. Okay, first I want to talk about a couple of headlines for you today. And the main headline that seems to be going around the last couple of days is that Russia has lost hard-to-replace systems that help its forces to find and destroy Ukrainian artillery. And Western intelligence says there aren't many left. Ukraine's Special Operations Forces recently destroyed a Russian Zoopark counter-battery radar. The Russians have lost at least 6 of these critical detection systems, and they're having a hard time replacing them, I guess, for obvious reasons at this point. Russia likely only has a few of these left in Ukraine, but anyway, they're having a problem with their radar for detecting and destroying Ukrainian artillery, which might explain one of the reasons why it's taking so long, or the Russians have not been successful around Bakhmut and other places on the Eastern Front. And a few things from Reuters we have here. International Monetary Fund says its executive board has approved 4-year, $15.6 billion loan program for Ukraine as part of its global $115 billion package to support that country's economy as it battles Russia's 13-month-old invasion. We have $2.6 billion in U.S. Military aid package that could include air surveillance radar. So the Ukrainians are getting radar as the Russians are losing theirs. It will also include anti-tank rockets and fuel trucks for Ukraine's fight against Russia. A senior Ukrainian official on Friday ruled out any ceasefire in Russia's war on his country that would involve Russian forces remaining on the territory they now occupy in Ukraine, which suggests a continuation and a longer war ahead. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov of Russia said on Friday that Russia faces existential threats to its security and development from unfriendly states, as he presented President Vladimir Putin with an updated foreign policy doctrine. Okay? The Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said on Friday that Russia has decided to station tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. This could, if necessary, put intercontinental nuclear missiles there too. Just a little bit of editorial on that last. It's thought that the Russians already have these tactical nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, which is that part of Russia which is enclosed by Lithuania, the Baltic Sea, and Poland. Right, so let's move on to today's topic. We have Stanislav Onyshchuk from Ivano-Frankivsk. Is that right? Is that where you are today? Near there.
Yes, everything correct. Hello.
Yep, in an undisclosed, hello, and welcome to the show, in an undisclosed exact location. We won't say exactly where that is. We have Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez, and we have Patrick Patterson. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Thank you for being here talk about this important subject. I think I'll start with you, Stanislav. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, what you specialize in, how you got started, and, you know, the basic background of your operation?
Okay, I want to start with few words about our history. So before the escalation, we was just like regular hospital, like commercial hospital, and we provided urological treatments, urological surgery, and plastical surgery. And it was important. We opened just 3 months before the escalation, and when 24 February 22 war began, we decided to for the war period to forget about commercial side and just to think about social, our social role, and we transformed it into like voluntary hospital. I could say that before the war we didn't have enough team members, and we needed much more doctors, much more nurses, and just one way I decided I have to do it. I decided to do the necessary step, as I thought that time, like to do small advertising about like we want to create such new type of hospital in Ukraine, and we need a team, and I offer it to anyone who wanted to join us to join and to create like new voluntary hospital initiative.
How many doctors do you have working there at the moment, basically?
For now, our team is a little bit less than 30 people, but before the escalation, all our team was just 10 people. So that time when we decided to create this new hospital, there was like first days of war, and a lot of people from Mariupol, from Kherson, from Kharkiv, from Sumy, from Luhansk and Donetsk region, they moved here to west of Ukraine with their families. They was like scared, and they had to take care about their families because of media support. So a lot of media just catch this my Facebook interview and showed it to big number of people using Telegram channels or media channels. So a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses saw that my interview. Very huge number of very professional doctors and nurses and other like technical hospital staff called me and say, I am ready to join you, and I'm ready to help you to create such new hospital. I could say it was just thanks to fortune or thanks to God, that idea was very successful, because just after 7 days after such interview, we had about 40 people in a new team, and the part of them was very professional surgeons, very professional traumatologists, nurses, anesthesiologists, and all needed technical staff to run out new hospital. I said to everyone that, as I said in advertising, it is like voluntary thing. We didn't have money, and we couldn't offer any money to pay for work. But if anyone feel the power, feel the experience of their own, and feel the enough knowledges, we are ready to start treating right now. And then, by the way, we will search for maybe money, we will search for drugs, we will search for instruments, and we will improve our everyday work. And maybe we will find the ways to cover like financial side of their work, to pay them some money for their families, or for made it possible to cover their life costs. And everyone who called me that time said, yes, I know, I read it I understood it in your message, and I am ready to join you as a volunteer.
How many patients do you have there now, and how many have you have you processed through during this time? I'm assuming, perhaps I'm wrong, that you've had people in and then sent them on, whether to home or further afield.
I can say that on our first meetings, we formulated like two different ways of medical help. One was like polyclinical medical help, and we understood that it would be much more helpful for IDPs, for refugees, who that days there was a huge number of IDPs came in here by train or by cars. Ivano-Frankivsk in few days or in 1 week received more than 20,000 refugees. It's a huge number for our city because our population is about 2,500,000 people. One part of our help is like polyclinical medical care for IDPs. Another part of help is surgical department for wounded soldiers. And surgical department is focused on orthopedics and trauma, like for treating things after mine exploding injuries or gunshots injuries.
Right. And again, how many sort of people are you able to take care of? And could you estimate how many have been through there? I mean, people who watch this may be interested in helping you, and that might be a statistic which would be informing.
Yes, I could say it. So polyclinical department covered of medical help more than 3,000 people during this year.
This gives the scope of what you're doing. That's a lot of people. So I wanted that to be out there. You're taking care of a lot of people. You call it the first voluntary surgical hospital. Let's go over to Patrick for a second. We'll come back to Anthony. Patrick, if you could describe what you've heard about it and how you ended up going there to take photographs and do some interviews with some of the patients and what you've observed there.
It was mutual friends put us in contact with each other. Stanislav was eager to have us travel to Ivano-Frankivsk. For immediately being picked up at the rail station and taking the short drive to the hospital, learning the history behind the hospital, and then getting to this small village that overlooks the Carpathian mountain range, I realized that this was a very unique place. What first stands out is that this hospital has connections with German investors, which it was built to German standards. The type of care that patients are receiving there are top-notch, world-class healthcare. Not only from the facility, but also from the doctors who are providing that care. The first thing that I noticed pulling in is you have this backdrop of the Carpathian Mountains, and you hear birds, and patients are outside taking that in before their surgeries and after their surgeries. From a surgical standpoint, surgery is surgery, so they're dealing with the technical side. But I think the most important thing that this hospital is doing is that they're going another step forward, is that they're not just performing these surgeries, they're treating the patient from a holistic standpoint, so mind, body, and soul. They're providing mental health services. So far since I've been there, I've been on 2 equestrian rides with wounded soldiers at a nearby stable. And I've been to the Philharmonic with a group of wounded soldiers. So unfortunately, I missed their art class that they had. It's not just a hospital where people are coming and getting treated for their injuries. They're getting the holistic treatment. The other thing I can touch base on is that, for example, their anesthesiologist, there's not enough patients coming in. There's not enough surgeries happening frequently enough. Her professional help is needed from that standpoint. So she's helping in other capacities. She's helping soldiers get dressed and put shoes on. She's helping with just daily services that are needed around the hospital, from organizing, helping with English classes. And the entire time, her newborn child is there, and soldiers are helping take care of her child while she's performing surgery. And it's just this giant family that I already want to go back. I just want to be there. I want to be around the people who are being treated there, and I just want to be around the doctors and nurses and staff that are providing this care. It's just a warm, welcoming place.
Right. Thank you for that, Patrick. Anthony, as someone who's been on the front line numerous times, who has been both a medic and also a wounded vet and is a wounded veteran, how important is a place like this in this present war effort, do you think?
It's extremely important because it actually allows the person to get used to not having something that's missing from them. Let me just touch on the PTSD. These guys are going to have PTSD for the rest of their lives. And if they're not missing a limb, they're going to deal with the mental aptitudes, the mental missing pieces. These guys are never going to come home the same. So that's a good place to actually start trying to get back and understanding how to deal with the PTSD, let alone when they have the surgeries, they have the facilities there to actually take care of the people with their limbs, with their missing limbs, and they start the physical therapy. They have the ability to actually get prosthetics, or they have the ability to actually take the time. They need time. Time is of the essence, because they need the time to get used to it, to get how to get back to normality, somewhat of a normality. They will never be normal, but they need something or some people that will actually guide them and be there. And the ability to actually be near horses or near animals that are actually therapeutic, that's huge. They give them the chance to start little by arts and crafts classes, music. Music is something that will soothe a lot of issues with PTSD, and that's actually been known. That's known for hundreds of years, but yet we've lost that practice. We need to practice that again, and that's why this hospital is, to me, is phenomenal that they do that still, and that's awesome. I hope they continue that, and the other hospitals around the world would take note of this. But yeah, that's extremely important, and I applaud you guys for taking that and continuing that. That's absolutely amazing.
So it's important in a war situation. I think this is an interesting point you're making, Anthony. But not only, it's important in any situation where someone might have suffered traumatic injury, whether it's war or not. Because I think that's the point you're making. And that's a very good point, because sometimes we just think, well, we only need that in an emergency war situation. But this type of rehabilitation can extend well beyond that.
Exactly.
Situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and touching on that point, Will, that's the whole thing. These guys have already set up to continue on after the war, and not only for the soldiers but the civilians. That's the one thing that a lot of people are missing, in not understanding that this war does not just affect soldiers. It is affecting kids. It is affecting adolescents. It's affecting adults, and it is affecting the elderly. These guys their homes have been bombarded like crazy. Some of these guys have been tortured. Some of these guys have actually walked out into the field and their legs have been blown off because of mines being placed by these so-called humans that are invading Ukraine. And it's worse, and it gets worse even that. And some of these people have lost their families because they have been tortured and thrown into pits that have hundreds of other people, and they're finding them all over. Bucha is just a small one. And that's just until we find more, and until we have the time to find them. That's where these guys come in. That's why it's pivotal.
So there's the physical and the psychological element that needs to be stressed over and over again. That applies to not only soldiers who are wounded, but also to civilians who may find themselves in the line of fire or be targets of the invading forces. Stanislav, would you care to add to this at this point? You look like you're ready to say something.
I just wanted to add some words to previous speakers. We thought that our role would be only surgeries and to treat the bones, to treat the bodies. But after 4 or 5 months, we understood that all the soldiers who came to us for treatments, and some of them was staying in our hospital for many months, like 3 or 4 months, because of hard injuries they had. And we understood that almost all they are very stressed. They have like not okay night dreams.
They have nightmares. Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of them had them. A lot of them had problems with communication with other people. And we understood that guys staying in our hospital for a long time, it's our loan to give them not only physical treatment, but to make them fitable to the society. It's like two-side role, not only for society, but also for guys. They need to, and we started to think how we can do it. And we found one very interesting idea that if they spend a lot of days, a lot of time in our hospital, we need to build not the relations like doctors and patients. We need to build the relations like human and human. What we could do for it, we could offer them a lot of like common events. And we started to go to the museums together, team and soldiers. We started to go to mountain trips, like a part of a team and soldiers. We started to go to the theater, and then after the theater spectacle, we discussed a little bit the impression of it or the thoughts about it. We started to recognize the barriers between us as doctors and our patients, and we started to destroy that walls. Like we did the common kitchen, and all patients could come to the kitchen anytime, and the same kitchen we used for us. And there is a lot of different discussions on the kitchen. You can come there and you can see the patients sitting on the one table with doctors, and they just discuss different themes, not only treatments, but political situation or just their thoughts about different themes. This type of relations gave them the emotional base to feel that they are not separate. They are the part of society. They are the part of community. Yeah. And
this is a very good point. We have to end at this segment. We have to end now. We'll come back in the next segment after these commercial messages. I just want to say that's a very, very good point, that people can feel alienated. The soldiers as well as civilian victims can feel alienated from society. What has happened to me, has separated me from not only my past life, but integration back into life. And this is a bridge. This is a bridge, what you're doing. So both psychologically and physically. A medical bridge, dealing with, as Patrick aptly said, with the spiritual as well as the physical nature of war trauma. Okay, we'll be right back. Please watch these messages. They keep us on the air. Thank you. See you in a minute. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are talking to Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez and Patrick Patterson and Stanislav Onyshchuk, who is the inventor of and the manager of the first voluntary surgical hospital near Ivano-Frankivsk in southwestern Ukraine, near the Romanian, or getting on towards the Romanian frontier. We've been talking about the work of his hospital, taking care of psychological and physical trauma of soldiers and citizens in the Ukraine, victims of the war. And I want to continue with Patrick, if I may, Patrick Patterson, journalist, photographer, who has been documenting the care at the facility and speaking to people there going through the process of trying to reintegrate into society after traumatic events. Patrick, you were giving us your impressions before of what the surroundings are like, what the atmosphere is like, and it's very illuminating. Can you tell us about some of the conversations you've had with people that strike, the ones that strike you the most?
You know, this hospital is for me humanity at its finest. From the people who are working there every day with patients to the patients themselves. And I think sometimes people can forget and get caught up in the, as some people would say, the glamour of war, and not get down to understanding that these are people. These are human beings, those who are not only fighting, but the people who, the civilians that are impacted by this war. And there was one story that really stuck with me from a soldier, and Demilia. He's from the Kyiv region, and he started out as a volunteer. He is a lawyer by trade, and the invasion happened, and he went. And he told a very personal story that really hit me. He was on the streets before a push happened from Russian forces. And from about 50 meters, a young Russian soldier is casually walking across the street. And he picks up his rifle and he puts the bead on this Russian soldier, puts his finger on the trigger, and he tells me that he couldn't squeeze the trigger. He couldn't do it. And this soldier disappears. And he talked about he's a father, he's a human, and that personal moment that he had with that young Russian soldier and not being able to squeeze the trigger, it's something that he thinks about often. And then something changes for him when the fighting happens. He's able to engage. But these soldiers psychologically are he's an attorney, he's a lawyer. He's not a trained soldier. He didn't go through basic training. He didn't go to a military academy. It would be as if all of a sudden I picked up a rifle and was expected to walk into the front lines and understand what it was like to take another human being's life. And just because Russia is invading Ukraine doesn't mean that these Ukrainian soldiers are necessarily excited to be taking other people's lives. So that's the psychological impact. That's the PTSD that's going to happen and stick with this soldier for the rest of his life. And then that young Russian soldier took part in that storm and that push on Ukrainian forces. And what I asked him is how he felt knowing that he didn't shoot that soldier, and knowing that that soldier could have taken other Ukrainian lives in that push, in that storm. And his response is, I'm human. And I have that moral compass inside me that made me not able to pull the trigger when it was just that intimate one-on-one soldier to soldier. Fierce battles, it comes naturally. He's able to act as a soldier. And the other thing is that a lot of these physicians and therapists, and doctors who are running the Polytech Clinic and who are working at this surgical hospital are IDPs themselves. They're displaced from different parts of Ukraine. There's a physician and a psychologist that are married that are from Mariupol. There's an amazing physician at the surgical hospital who's from Bucha, and she shared the story of talking to her parents as they fled Bucha. Her mom was shot and killed, left on the side of the highway while her father crawled to safety. And then he called friends in Kyiv. They went and picked him up while his wife laid on the side of the road next to the car. What this hospital is doing is they're not only treating the soldiers, but they're allowing these physicians therapists and doctors who've been displaced and had trauma themselves to come to a place and heal together as well. So it's not just that the hospital staff is healing the soldiers. These soldiers that are coming there are also healing the doctors and the staff that are working at the Polytech Clinic in this hospital. It is the most unique hospital that I've seen in Ukraine, and it's also one of the most unique hospitals that I've heard about operating. I can't say enough about this place.
Right. Thank you, Patrick. Very interesting stories. That's like a bit of an all quiet on the Western Front moment. You can say, of course, the famous book, which was a recent Academy Award nominee. You have some questions, I think, Anthony, perhaps that would initiate discussion with Stanislav, now that you have him here. The two of you are here for a reason. Would you like to go ahead and pose a question or two?
Yeah, Stanislav. So a lot of my questions are based on my experience and how I've been myself with the soldiers when they come, civilians, and let's just give it out flat out. They're people. When they come in, sometimes they might not even be themselves. They might not even know where the heck they are. How do you receive and how quickly get treatment, especially the ones that have actually received injuries? Because the quicker you get them to treatment, the more likely of a chance they are actually going to be able to use the limbs or be able to start adapting to it. How long? And this is just one of many, because I wish I've had that. It took me days before I got treatment. How fast do you guys treat them?
Thank you. Very nice question. As I told you, what we are focused on, but I didn't describe it enough. We are just because of very big distance between frontline and our hospital. We understand that it's not the case when we will meet hot trauma. And of course, there is a lot of hospitals near the front line. And in the first step, injured soldiers came to the frontline hospitals. Then they are stabilized there. And we knew it and we understood it before. And we decided to be focused on a very precise surgery, like hand reconstructive surgery, foot reconstructive surgery, and peripheral nerves sewing, neurosurgery. So we received the patients after frontline hospitals, from 2 to 4 weeks after date of injury. And our case is not to work with unstable patient, but just to work with hand, with foot, and with nerves. Because frontline hospitals, they are really overfilled and they work in very big flow of patients. It's not possible for them to pay a lot of attention to give back movements of every finger, to give back feeling of foot. But patients need them just in a minute for came back fighting. They have to have 5 working fingers. But it's very hard to realize such precise surgical process in frontline hospitals. So we taken care about small part of injured soldiers, but we are very focused and we do it very well.
So you guys are taking the occupational surgeries, the occupational therapy, and then the reintegration training. That's awesome. God, I cannot give you more accolades than that. Well, honestly, there's so many questions that they are just answering by that, and it's unreal. The thing that I really like and love that you guys are doing is you guys are actually being human in front of them. You're not being professional. Of course, you're being professional, not what I meant. What I mean is that you're not just being a doctor and that's it. You're actually touching, being personal steps, being a personal approach, being empathetic, being taking the humility part of it and just relating to the person, because these people have actually been there. They know how they feel. It's one of the most loveliest things I've ever heard, and I am very honored to be in your guys' presence with that. Thank you very much. I wish that more of the American side and more of the other militaries and countries would take an example from you guys. And you guys are figuring this out in a war. It's unreal. You guys are. I wish we could emulate this all over the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your words. It's what just we especially understood that when we started to pay a lot of attention to the human relations between us and patients, we saw the great results in also medical processes, in the treatment processes. And this is a thing I wanted to recommend to every hospital which work with not only military patients, to think about them not only as a doctors, but also as a humans who speaks with humans.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the comment from Tony that he's surprised that this kind of innovation is taking place in a war, well, it's not actually the war zone there, but not far away, and that this is something you would think would be investigated and developed during peacetime or far away from the front. That's extremely interesting. So there's innovation in the care, not just in the manners of warfare, but in the care of wounded soldiers and civilians, the victims of war. This is invaluable, it seems to me, and I'll second what Tony and Patrick have been saying so far on the program, and surprising. It must have. How did you get the funding? Have you had help with this during wartime in the last year? And what kind of funding are you getting? Where is it coming from generally? And I'm sure you need more all the time, don't you?
Very interesting question, and thank you for it. I could say it was a very difficult question to me previous year. When we started the first voluntary hospital, we didn't know how long the war will take, how much time the war will take. We hoped it will take a few months. And when we did the first steps, I offered it to everyone. I was honest with everyone. I said, we don't have money to pay. We don't have any plan to raise money, but we could do it together. We will do what we can do, and in parallel way, we will search for the possibilities to get in money or to get in materials, drugs, and everything else. And first 4 months, we worked absolutely without money, with no $1 donations. But these 4 months we spent for sending a lot of grant program applications to different countries, to USA, to Poland, to Italy, to Germany, to Ukraine, charity foundations. From the beginning, we worked 7 days per week with no vacation, and we worked from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. We worked really a lot, and we did more than 40. We sent more than 40 applications, asking for money or for another kind of support to different organizations all over the world. And after 4 months of just voluntary work, we won first grants. Now we have quite stable financing for 1 year in forecast, and our main donors, main helpers, is Médicos Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, Spain, Methodistic Church from USA, Fundacja Elite from Poland, and Oxfam is British organization. What I can assume, if I could come back in 1 year ago, I will do the same. And my recommendation and my conclusion is to do what you want to do, and to all the time looking for new possibilities, to ask people, to ask organizations, to explain them what we exactly do, what we can do in the forecast, what we can do in the future, and what we need for it. And it was not easy, but we was lucky to finally find the sustainable support of worldwide organizations who doing support to us.
What kind of budget do you have? I mean, those are serious organizations, which is great, that are helping you. What kind of budget do you have, and do they see what you're doing as innovative and a special project, as Anthony was saying before, not just in Ukraine, but perhaps a pattern for the future, a template for the future, and handling traumatic injury?
Yes, thank you for the question. I will try to answer it in full. The total budget for keep running whole hospital, surgical department, and polyclinical department, and also mobile team. We are also moving through Ivano-Frankivsk region to come to IDP shelters and to provide medical care on the place of IDPs living. So total budget is a little bit less than 15,000 euros, and it is about everything, about drugs, about fuel, about maintenance, about heating, about financial, about finance to employees.
Payment for employees. That's 15,000 euros per month, or?
Per month.
Per month, okay. Okay.
To make it real, to one such grants program and to find sustainable financing, we had to explain and we had to formulate the innovation of our work. It was not our imagination. So we described what we really do, and we described how just this small concept, the conception of small hospital, how it much more good for the patients than just big hospital with traditional structure of it. And I'm sure that we finally found the source of funding just because of we little bit different from all other hospitals.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were telling me off camera that you started in a one room, a hospital in one room for a surgery, a doctor's office in one room for dermatology, and this just shows that necessity as well as vision combined can create something really quite phenomenal. This is fascinating stuff, obviously. Anthony, do you have something you'd like to say? Perhaps a contact between the two of you.
Yeah.
Why don't you give briefly what you're doing, because we got only 2 minutes left for the show.
Yeah.
And we'll end there.
So Stanislav, there is an organization that I've been working with for a long time. It's called Alliance for Innovation. They work with prosthetics all over the place, but that's not the only thing. They touch on everything. We've gotten soldiers out to get the prosthetics, but the one thing that they're lacking is the continuous care. And we would definitely like to work with you for follow-on continuous care of the veterans, which is not only and civilians, for them to getting occupational therapy and also continuing their mental rehabilitation, which is the longest, which mental rehabilitation is going to be for the rest of their lives. And that's the one thing that we have to lay the foundation with all the hospitals, not only in Ukraine, but the ones that have internationally displaced persons. That's what IDP stands for, all over the world.
Thank you very much. We've got to end it there. Let me just cap this. I want to thank Patrick Patterson for bringing the story to my attention. I want to thank you, Anthony, for lending your commentary and experience, particular experience on this subject. And thank you for adding your last comment about possible cooperation. It sounds like a very good idea, doesn't it? And of course, Stanislav Onyshchuk, with the first voluntary surgical hospital. Sounds a bit like a MASH, you know, the old television show. You're an amazing guy. I'm glad to have met you. You're all amazing guys. I'm glad to know you all. And I want to thank you very much for appearing on the show. Let's see if we can't get this message out to more people with an article to follow up. I'll be working with Patrick on that. So thank you very much, gentlemen. What a pleasure, as always, to see you, Anthony and Patrick, and to meet you, Stanislav. Thank you, everybody. That's it for this show. May I say that you're looking well, and why don't you stay that way?